Hi, namaste, good afternoon, all. Welcome to yet another edition of Arohana 2. Today we have a very interesting guest, Mayank Bidwatka, co-founder of Koo, as you know, a very popular media brand launched during the pandemic. Mayank has been earlier part of many exciting startups, including Vocal, Redbus, and many others. Today, we invite him to share his thoughts and ideas around brand positioning and communications. So, some basic ground rules. Keep the chat going. There's a Q&A session later. You can ask us questions. So to kickstart the proceedings, I request Mayank to give a brief presentation for about 15-20 minutes, and then we'll start the Q&A. I will ask questions to Mayank first, and then we will open it up to the audience later. Welcome, Mayank.
Hi. Thanks for the quick intro. Given the fact that we have very little time, I'll quickly start off with a presentation. A lot of the stuff is common knowledge. If you know about it, ignore. If it's an insight, you can make note of it. And we'll try to spend more time on Q&A, so it's more relevant and fruitful for you guys.
So this will be recorded, Mayank, and then it'll be floated on YouTube later for people to, look at it in leisure. Today, right. They can focus on what you have to say. Got it.
So, I've been a part of a lot of startups, either started or been a part of them, and lots of interesting learnings across different kinds of startups, whether it's travel e-commerce or media commerce or daily commerce, now social. So lots of interesting learnings, but a lot of these learnings are too long to jot down, and hence things that can be covered in Q&A we'll do there. But these are some of my learnings, and I've tried to make note of these, and so it makes some sense to you guys. First interesting important learning was understanding the difference between sales and branding in the early days at Redbus, right? Where we used to have some board members which would call at the end of the day and say, today how many seats did you sell? And we don't care about branding as much as we care about daily sales. So made us think a lot about what sales means for an early stage startup and what branding means. Usually startups do a lot of branding activities at a later stage in a startup, because sales is what really matters. It's what gets your ARRs going. It gets your next rounds of funding and stuff like that. Since this is not a two-way thing, so one is to think of the difference, but here's what I understand of the difference is that sales is something that you do which is immediate, whereas brands are built for the long term, so that sales becomes sustainable. You don't have to sell every day. It moves a company from being a push-based company to a pull-based company, right? So that's the big difference between sales and branding. Branding can be done in various ways. It's about how you talk, what you talk. Every touch point becomes a part of your brand, because a brand is finally what people think of you, your product, your company, right? It's an amalgamation of all the experiences that they've had with every touch point that they've had with you, right? So even an email will contribute to building your brand. Here's another lesson, right? If you ask people what brand they prefer, whether it's Nike or Reebok, and you can think about this, a lot of people will say Nike, right? But if you ask them why you like Nike more than Reebok, if they definitely don't know the big technical differences between these two shoe brands, right? So they'll try to justify why they like Nike more. But frankly, what has really happened is that they've formed an irrational preference for that brand. So an important part of your journey is to figure out, how do I create irrational preferences for my brand, my product, my company? Rational preferences are very easy to build. The best brands are those where you like them, but you don't know why. And then you'll find reasons to justify why you like that brand, right? So your journey of brand building is about building irrational preferences. When you're looking at creating the brand, it's as good as you trying to sell yourself. If I were to ask you to sell yourself, how would you sell yourself? You'll have to get to, this is really what I'm about. It's not, I am Mayank, I'm a founder of Poo. No, you have to go deeper and maybe tell a story, right? That is what people connect with. So what is really what's the soul of your brand? The way to think of this is, why is it that you started? What problem are you solving that someone else is not solving, or you're trying to do something which is very different? You need to bring this out in your story. You need to bring this out when you're explaining to people what you're about, right? Important questions to think about. How would you position yourself? How would you sell yourself, right? Just remember that positioning is an exercise which is relative, and it's relative to competition. So it's very important to understand what other competitors are doing and how do you create a unique space in someone's mind. What is it that you can say about your product which will make them think about you very, very differently? It's very important when we're looking at branding or any kind of sales pitches to understand what is it about my product that if I say this to someone, it sticks. They should get it and they should be willing to give it a try, or they should be willing to keep trying it out. So it's important to get the pitch right? And this is something that will come with practice. When we were doing Redbus, it was various things saying, come and book online so that you don't have to go to multiple travel agents. Find all the bus schedules in one place. Come and book online because you will get to choose your seat. Do this because, all the inventory is in one place. You might find tickets here that you don't find there. When you keep doing this with a lot of consumers and one-to-one is when you start realizing, saying, this is really why they are trying to book online. They want to go to a travel agent, but they have to go to the travel agent post work, but they might not have time. Buses and seats might sell off by that time. So perfecting your pitch is very important. Talking to users throughout the journey of you running your startup is very important because it will give you insights you couldn't possibly have had if you were just thinking about the problem here, right? So learn to deliver the most effective pitch and see what sticks, and that is the one that you should scale when you're doing any kind of mass communication. Ask yourself the question, what is it that I want this person to remember once I leave? I've said 5-6 different things, but what should they finally remember at the end of it? This question will actually help you identify key messages for your brand or your company, right? Saying all that I want you to remember about Koo finally is the fact that this was built because India is a large country with a lot of languages and nobody gave this experience to language users. So we are a multilingual microblogging platform. All that I want them to remember is this was built for Indian languages and nobody's catering to it. I might have 20 different ways in which I say it, but finally, that's what I want people to remember. So your entire company should be speaking that one language, and you keep talking about the same thing and hammering down the same message in the user's minds. Please remember that, when you're looking at branding and when you're looking at creating an image for your company, a perception for your product, it's important to not do the ordinary. Or if you're doing the ordinary, do it in a very special way. Like simple thing, in Redbus, we would write to users when there was a long holiday with one day missing. We would write saying, why don't you ask your boss for a leave on Friday so that you can get a Thursday to Sunday holiday? And here's a little letter that you can write to them to apply for a leave. And we would sign off saying your friends are Redbus. So we're not doing anything extraordinary. It is an email, but the way in which we've written it reflects a particular personality of the brand, and which is what a lot of people will connect with, right? So it's not about the big, loud mass media or big, loud ad campaigns that you did, but it's the small things in the nuances and the nuances that really matter. Like in Redbus again, in the early days, when someone selected Bangalore to Goa or Bombay to Goa against the name Goa we try TPA, right? Now that's a very small nuance, but someone's going to Goa to have fun, and when you write that, people notice it. Again, a very nice little nuanced way to reach out to users and communicate what you stand for as a brand, right? Uh, this is more about thinking big, right? Always think about what's the best thing that you can do for your brand, and then figure out ways in which you can make that happen. Like if this is cool, one big thing would be, how do I make the biggest guy in the country, which is the prime minister, take my name and tell the country to come and use the product? And we figured a way in which we could have achieved that through the Atmanirbhar app challenge, and we made that happen. So it's very important to imagine the best thing you can do for your brand. Don't shy away from thinking about, is this possible, not possible? No. Keep thinking about, this is what will work best for my brand, and these are the things that I need to do. And if this happens, my brand will take off. Figure out a way to make that happen. This is the end of my very short presentation, and it's just a broad overview of my learnings, but I wanted to spend more time in Q&A so I could be more helpful to folks.
Sure. No, thanks, Mayank. I think it gives you a sense of your thinking and naturally segues into asking more about the topic, which is brand positioning communication. How is it relevant for our cultural entrepreneurs? And also get to understand a little bit about Ku's journey as well, right? Thanks so much on talking about positioning and what do you mean by brand. And we didn't get into basics, but you sort of alluded to the fact that there was a clear space, because sometimes the vision or the brand name itself is the story, right? Sometimes the medium, that's the message. So how did you guys come about, what was the compelling reason? I mean, you alluded to multilingual stuff, but in a competitive space, generally, if you look at the social media platforms, be it Twitter, or because Twitter is the only microblogging site that we've known till Ku came in, right? Otherwise, you go to China, Brazil, or Russia, where literally all of these guys are banned and they were forced to create their own version, right? So there is only one Facebook, right? There is only one Instagram. There's only one LinkedIn. Somehow the internet economy and this aggregation is built for monopoly. But it takes a lot of brave souls to say, we will fight the incumbent and create a difference. So I'm sure you thought about all of this when you guys launched Ku. So if you can share a bit about the journey, how Ku came about, I think it'll be lovely to hear.
Yeah, sure. So India is actually a very difficult market, a unique market in many ways. We've, me and my co-founder Pramay, we both created products that cater to like a 50 to 100 million user base. Whether it was Taxi for Sure for him, Redbus for me. We wanted, throughout our startup journey, we always think about impact and how many lives you can impact and how you can impact them. What you mean in the lives of a user, and what kind of service have you delivered to them, and you want to keep moving up the chain. So for us, moving up the chain was, let's impact more people. Can we create products that can cater to 1 billion people, and not just in India, but a lot of people in India, for example, if you see that one of the very few countries which has the kind of language diversity that it has, right? With thousands of languages, almost 1 billion people don't speak English, or more than 1 billion people don't speak English, but one of the few 100 languages, thousands of dialects, 22 official languages. A lot of us think in our mother tongue. Now, microblogging has never been given to this segment. It's a very large segment. It's one of the, actually, it's the largest, unworld economy. Like China is a world economy, right? You can't launch Twitter. You can't launch a lot of products. It's a walled garden. India is one of the largest internet markets, which is an open economy, and a lot of the global folks that are creating products will not get language nuances and India language nuances as well as we will. And we wanted to create something that gives a voice to a larger set of people because of the geo revolution. A lot of people now coming onto the internet are folks that don't necessarily speak in English. They don't have a lot of meaningful products that they can use. If you look at the way the internet evolved around the world, it was because of tools which democratize creation for creators, whether it was YouTube, whether it was blogging like WordPress, Blogger, tools like Twitter, that really democratize voice. This hasn't happened in India. Like on Twitter, if you go and change a language, nothing changes. If you want to connect with other people that speak a particular language, Kannada, Hindi, Tamil, you don't get a list.
Unless they input in their own language, unless they input, yeah.
Even if they do that,
Yeah.
everything is still in English. You can change the input on Twitter and see that everything continues to remain in English. The instructions, the kind of people you're shown, trending, all of that continues to be in English. I'm sure it's not a question of competence, but maybe intent, context, all of that, right? But we see a big gap there, and it's a matter of time when you can cater to that gap faster than most of the other global folks can, because they have a different context. They're chasing different things, and hence India is not as important a market as. But if you look at the world economy in general, you'll see that 20% of the people in the world speak in English. 80% is not speaking English. So the product that we've created is actually relevant for the world. So once you get the architecture right, once you get the systems in place, this is a product that can be unleashed on the world. So that's broadly the thought behind Koo.
No, fabulous. Thanks so much for sharing. It's also a bit surprising because when Facebook has about 8 languages, or Google has about 8 other languages, Indian languages, for people to search, to only operate on English brings me to the next point. You have also a share chat, right, which is also delves in the local content, regional languages, etc., for people to share and connect as well, right? Because that's in some sense the height of UGC, because there's nothing else right now available. But yeah, you're right. We also about 500 million smartphone users, right? And then it's with Geo and all of that stuff, low cost, people have access. But when Koo was launched, I remember seeing and knowing about it. How has that gone to the segments that you really want to come on board? What is the composition of an audience like?
Well, Koo is basically catering to a bunch of segments. If you look at the top segment, top of the pyramid, you have the VIPs, the VVIPs of the country, most important prominent faces. Then you have the intellectuals, which is segment B. Then you have the masses of India, which is folks that want to do well and progress in life, right? Koo is one of the few products that can cater to all the segments, because it's a people network. It's about connecting with people. It's not a content network like you mentioned, ShareChat, which is a content network. As soon as you enter the app, I'll take your language and start showing you content. But that's not something that happens on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter. You need to follow people to be able to see relevant content. That's Koo structured on a similar line, where you need to follow certain people to be able to see content. So we cater to these different segments, and most vernacular products do not cater to these. They largely cater to segment C, which is aspiring Indians or people who want vernacular content. They miss out the most interesting, important people which form a large part of the top of the pyramid. These are the folks that have the ability to create content, and hence a lot of meaningful UGC happens. I don't find a lot of meaning in good morning, good evening messages, right? And hence we never even wanted to create a network like that. But aspirational India, which is appearing for UPSC, wants to listen to IS officers. People who look up to Bollywood folks want to know updates of their lives. People who care about government agencies want to know what the new policies are. There are people who want to know what a particular politician is thinking and thinking of their particular state or region or any of that. To make that connect is what is important. It's not easy for people to have access to a Yogi Adityanath or a senior Bollywood artist or an IS officer or a senior psychologist. both our startups, whether Vocal or Koo, have always been about connecting people to other people who they look up to, and in the process of doing that, they also connect with each other. So that's really the segments that we largely cater. Yeah.
No, thanks, Matt. So, if I can ask you this, how do you sort of, as a startup yourself, right? How do you see a business model from something like this? What are your sort of kind of milestones? How do you envision Koo being relevant today and tomorrow?
Yeah, like you said, these are winner takes all markets, and these are almost non-disruptible markets because you're creating networks. Very difficult to outdo a network or beat a network because there is accumulative value. What that means is you have 0 followers today. In a few days, you have 1,000 followers. You have 1 lakh followers. Now, at no point of time are you going to leave 1 lakh followers behind. This value has accumulated over a period of time for you as a creator. That's the kind of system that's been built on Koo, right? Which drives a lot of value to every creator. For the user, they are finding a lot of content that they prefer and have started following, and hence a particular cycle starts. So these are pretty much non-disruptible people networks of the future, right? How do you remain relevant? It's inbuilt into social networks because these are networks of people. It's not just a content format, or like TikTok is not a network.
Yeah.
As soon as I come, everyone will see the same stuff, and then they'll start personalizing the kind of folks that you follow, the kind of videos that can be shown to you. But even if you don't follow anybody, they will start showing you content, right? Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Koo, all these are examples of people networks. These are networks that keep getting enriched every time a particular interaction happens. So that's basically how you maintain defensibility in the long run. Lots of ways in which you can monetize. Every action can be monetized, and there are lots of interesting ways. I can't obviously talk about it under the hood stuff that we are yet to launch, but these are very low cost machineries, right? It's about building the technology, the infrastructure, the systems, and then the revenue potential is huge because of the kind of scale that you deal with.
Yeah, interesting. So today we have various kind of networks, right? You have a WhatsApp network, which is very local, right? And then you have public networks, social networks, right? Be it Facebook or Insta, Twitter, right? You're right. TikTok is not a network, more a democratizing content, so to speak, right? So, the days of top-down approach and then bottom-up approach both seem to coexist today, right? And then there is an element of quality and virality and all of that stuff. So how do you guys measure against the engagement itself, right? Because obvious comparison is there is Twitter and then there is these X number of characters that's involved. There is news and then there is newsmakers and then there's rant and opinions and all of that stuff. Right? Will it be the same format or will it be a little different? Can I go out of the network? Still, I can share stuff through personal networks like WhatsApp. So do you see in a situation where your own value proposition is constantly evolving?
Well, I think you just need to have some guiding principle so that you don't land up confusing users while you can keep asking them for what they find relevant and what they'd like to see.
Yeah.
These are UGC platforms, right? And hence you have to work towards the creator side, what kind of content is getting created. Or you need to set a particular mood, and hence the 400 characters so that people don't write long essays here and things like that. So, broader guidelines help you keep that in check.
So if I were to ask you, in an average consumer or audience mind, how do you want to be part of their life? Do you want them to see morning to evening, be involved, sharing their every moment like they do it in Twitter or other stuff? Because clearly the screen time has gone up, right? You're looking at an average of 4 to 5 hours for every Indian citizen, right? For good or bad, that's what the scene is. And because now you're competing against screen time in some ways, right? How do you sort of enmesh yourself in the life of an Indian or a life of an individual when they have so many distractions, right? or does it make it only relevant for certain kinds of folks who don't have a voice yet? Because you're catering both to an urban audience as well as not so urban audience, right? I'm saying from a socio-economic class perspective.
Right.
Because TikTok has made itself accessible even to a daily laborer in India, right?
Yeah.
Who's using those prepaid connections.
Yeah. So when we look at building companies, right, you wear multiple hats when you evaluate what kind of product you want to build. Take TikTok, for example, right? It's relevant even to a daily laborer, but it's giving you funny videos. Now, what value you want to add to the lives of a user depends on you. Are you about making a product which will cater to 3 billion people or 4 billion people and make them laugh, or use you for time pass? Or do you want to create a product which might cater to a billion people but adds a lot of value in a very meaningful way? Where they're talking about information, they're talking about knowledge, they're talking about their opinions on things. These are why you start a company, right? What impact you want to create. For us, it's the latter. Personally, I won't want to create a very large company which is making people laugh necessarily, because I might not find that very meaningful. So it's a very personal thing. Social media has been very interesting because there are lots of different kinds of companies that are evolving, whether it's media first, whether it is companies like Instagram, Facebook, you have WhatsApp, not necessarily social, but so you have each of these platforms that are catering to particular moods, right? We wanted to create a company that can democratize voice and create small worlds around people. So if you're a person that likes cricket, how do I form a little world around me? Which is, I want to follow Ravi Shastri, I want to follow Virat Kohli, I want to follow Sehwag. I want to be able to interact with these creators. I want to be able to follow other people that have cricket as an interest. So really you're trying to build a product that helps, that keeps a user at the center of it and say, let me help him create a little world around him. So that's really how we look at this. And this is how you'll be relevant in the lives of a lot of people. It's a matchmaking process. Philosophy, I'm going to connect you with other people who like to talk about philosophy or folks who are experts at it.
Understand. So since we cater to, as NICE.org, our audience mainly are cultural entrepreneurs, and we're talking about cultural entrepreneurship, right? One of the reasons that we want to talk to you is about, you created a brand in a record time, right? Today, you're close to about 300 people. You've scaled up pretty fast, right? Of course, the experience of the founders, all of that, the credibility, reputation, all of that sort of helps, right? For so many budding entrepreneurs and people who are already on the journey in the culture space, in my mind, still Koo is a made in India product, right? And we're catering to multiple languages. So how is it uniquely positioned to tap the cultural aspects? If you can share some thoughts around it, or any ideas.
The platforms don't have to do that. Platforms are basically wrappers and tools that people will use and create their own stories and moods around, right? All that you have to do is get the community part right, and the community then starts shaping the product and what the platform starts looking like.
Yeah.
The early communities that you build is what really matters. What kind of people you invite, what kind of people you showcase right on top, like that. You'll see that a lot of cultural stuff is being discussed in non-English languages.
Yeah.
We launched English very late in our journey. Actually, we launched English just because a lot of users would keep writing and saying also add English. But for the first 15 months of our journey, for the first 9 to 10 months of our journey, we didn't even have English as a language on the platform. We added it because of user requests. So we are really built for India. It's made in India, it's made for languages. It is made for the world in the future in the language of the world, right? Whether it's in Spain and you speak Spanish, or Spanish folks around the world. we think that the larger framework that we've created is actually very unique, and solves a problem in a much deeper way than existing products do.
Sure. So in lots of ways, Indian market is also the proof of concept in lots of ways.
Yes.
Like you mentioned, more than nearly 1 billion people speak in local and native languages, regional languages than English. Right?
Yeah.
But have you sort of discovered something that is unique when you are catering to right now at this point in time a regional language, local language audience? Are they any different from an English speaking language in terms of the content they choose, how they choose to express, or is it just the language?
Yeah, lots of differences. They're not as skeptical as all of us are. A lot more accepting. They don't want to pull you down when you say something. It's a lot more positive. We discuss different things. It's not necessarily politics or news of the day and things like that. So there's a lot more positivity around them than the general skeptical nature of the English user, which is why you see a lot of trolling and stuff like that happening on English social media.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
What does it mean for, say, brands to be part of your journey? I mean, I'm asking this because obviously you're in media in lots of ways. You also talked about monetization. I know you don't want to get into details, but upcoming brands, cultural entrepreneurs, do they have a role in the growth of Koo, a mutually beneficial relationship? Do you see that as an opportunity at all?
Well, you're looking at it fundamentally, you just have to ask a question, what is it that they want out of it? And can I deliver it? If there's an answer to that, then we can work together. It's as simple as that. So, someone is selling, let's say, holidays. Someone is selling millets, like you had said, right?
Yeah.
Now there's an audience for that. And there's a particular kind of audience for that. Let's say it's organic, things like that. You have people that would like to connect with businesses like that. Social media done well is about matchmaking done well. Connect the right guy to the right person, right? Or the right person to the right creator, right person to the right business. And the better you do that, the stronger the network. So yes, there's a role for them for Koo to play in their lives. Yes.
Right. In social media, particularly, a lot of the news actually happens outside of the network, right? And then there is an amplification that happens within the network, right? And then that becomes some way self-sustaining news cycles, right? So when it comes to this kind of a content per se, what's the level of participation of newsmakers or regional language press with Koo itself?
Yeah, it's pretty large, and they play a very important role because it's a symbiotic relationship. They're looking for unique content, and Koo has the newsmakers. The most prominent faces of the country are coming and speaking here every day. They're sharing with the population what's on their mind, and they are the newsmakers, and they may not necessarily be doing interviews every day. So this is the easiest way to beam or broadcast your message. And a lot of the journalists and media houses want to come here immediately, get what these folks are saying, and then publish it to the larger population. So very important role being played by social media platforms as far as these VIPs and celebrities are concerned, and how fast that hits the media.
In some ways, it's becoming slightly influencer driven, right? For every news item or every sort of theme. But in terms of building audience itself, because a lot of the brands that we work with and a lot of our entrepreneurs in the community, they look to creating cost-effective content, right? And growth hacking. So from a content strategy perspective, one in general and two with respect to Koo, what is it that they can do, can't do, should be doing, be it if they're launching a commodity like a millet into a brand, or they're creating an experiential tourism product, right? Where you want to create an immersive experience, going to one of the historical places, or you want to, bring out something that is very local, a craftisan product that is so local to any region, right? How do you sort of, what would be your sort of thoughts around what kind of content, what should be the content thinking and strategy as such?
Well, you need to stand out. You can't just say here's a holiday to Maldives, right? That's boring. If you don't stand out, you don't get shared. Social media is all about people power. And people power is about sharing. How do you influence sharing in a large way, whether it's within the network, outside of the network? You can't get sharing unless you are, extraordinary.
Right.
How do you make extraordinary content is upon people's creativity.
Right. Right. So cool. I mean, there's a lot of interesting questions that's been posted. I want to ask few of them to you. So Muzammil Syed says, how do you measure the effectiveness of your brand awareness? Are there any KPIs to look for to measure? So essentially some metrics around how do you track, right, your brand awareness. I mean, it could be different for different people. I mean, for different brands. But if you can share something from your core experience in terms of was it the user base, is it daily engagement, is it daily average users? How do you guys measure in terms of brand awareness itself?
I was just trying to find this question and I could not. Where is
This is the first question that was asked.
How do you measure value?
You can go up.
Okay. Okay. How do you measure the effectiveness of yeah, it's. I mean, the more the awareness, the more the direct searches. Someone will not come to you via, let's say, your ads or Facebook or Google ads or something like that. More the brand searches, more the direct app downloads, things like that is what tells you about your brand. You can look at Google Trends, you can look at Chatter on any other social media platform. Things like that is, how you start getting a sense of your brand being spoken about and, outside of your network, outside of your family circle and things like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, then there's a question about if you have a startup and some traction, how do you raise capital? How do you find the right angel investor for seed funding? Maybe you can talk about whose experience in raising third-party capital.
It might not be very relevant here because we raised it for Vocal, but to answer this question in general, how do you find the right angel investor for seed funding? Well, you can, I would go by expertise. I would go with experience. These are folks that can help you in your journey. These could be executives, not necessarily who've done angel investing before, but are passionate about, the kind of problem that you're solving. They might have deep expertise and a great network that they can connect you to. So it's important to find the right person that can add value than looking for celebrity status of the angel investor. Sometimes you need it, sometimes you don't. So manage the mix. Yeah.
Right. And then there's a very interesting question around content from Aishwarya. It's saying that a mix of how Reddit and Quora went down. In the sense that they have created their own niches. Right? There is a Reddit space for Reddit, and there's a space for Quora. Right? From a content perspective, lots of brands are getting involved because you want to tell a story, you want to educate people. Right?
Yeah.
You need a cost-effective medium to do that. Right?
Yeah.
And lots of brands have embedded themselves in these places too. Particularly in Quora, I've seen a lot on education, etc. Yeah. So, from a cultural brand perspective, how do you think who can help some of these brands? I mean, there's a very clear ask. Is there a process of education that they go through? Do they have to sort of create a surrogate content? How do they sort of create a conversation, which is a lot more organic and authentic, right? Do you think that it lends into the format? Because Quora has Q&A, Reddit is Q&A again.
Yeah. Reddit is more community, Quora is more Q&A. I think that, the way you should look at any kind of social platform is to stop looking at transactions and stop transactionalizing the conversations there, right? These are very, the audiences are there for a very different reason, and they'll read through you very well as soon as they realize that you're there to market your product. They're trying to run away from people like you. So you need to understand that you can't act like your transactional self. They want to connect with real people, having real conversations. So if you wear the hat of how could I really help this person through a meaningful interaction without trying to affect my bias and what I will gain from it. Those are the brands that do really well on social. If you keep wearing your inside out hat and think of, I want to sell so many tickets by doing this, you'll have a very transactional relationship with users on that. So if you're trying to sell interesting holidays, put out interesting destinations and what people have done, and put out interesting human stories. That's what people would like to connect with. Put out stories of families that are using the millet example that you spoke of, right? And how this has affected their health. Those are the things that people want to connect with, and not necessarily transactional stuff.
So in some ways, you really have an opportunity on Koo to build a new audience for yourself faster, probably. Is that a good summary? Is that a good conclusion to have?
Well, no, these are all my personal opinions. Yes, I'm not talking as much about Koo because I don't want it to become a personal marketing thing.
Sure.
So I'm steering away from these, but yeah, whatever I shared is something that all the entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs can use here, not to look at marketing on social platforms as a very transactional way of projecting their brand. Be
Right.
genuinely helpful to people, and that will go a long way.
Sure. In terms of, I mean, coming back to your own brand and your own experience, like we discussed earlier, it's a very challenging space to be in because it's a fight for screen time, right? And then you're building that sort of, you mentioned about the VIPs and the celebrities and the newsmakers and the sort of people who are involved, in this whole discussion. Would it mean that in today average Indian's life, there's Bollywood and then there's cricket and then there is government and policies. Do you have a sense of what people should be talking about, or you are there to not edit what people's interests are, but let it organically come from various sources of where they see news as? Because the mainstream media or the media that we know traditionally, it's always talked about an editor's view and the reporter's view of things, right? What gets missed out is your neighborhood stories and those kind of interesting. So in some ways, TikTok and videos started exposing to lots of interesting things. So how does a crew fit in all of this as such? Like, can I just take a video of what's happening and put it out and see the response? Is that what you want people to do? Or you want people to write and talk about their own experiences? Or it's all of those?
It's all of that, right? It's social. It's a very social environment, which means people will do what they feel like doing. Whether you want to talk about your life, you want to talk about someone else's life, you want to talk about what just happened. All of those are possibilities and conversations that happen on social media, I guess. We don't want to dictate anything as a platform.
And majority of the users, are they like in Bangalore, in big cities, or where are they located? Are they spread across?
A lot of them are tier 2 locations.
Okay, got it. All right. So there's a question from Pooja: can NGO make an account on Koo? I mean,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Tapesh says most important factor in social media to promote your brand. Not really. I think he answered by saying that you need to be authentic. Sarita Singh, is a trick question. Would it be possible to get a Hindi transcript of your talk? So, Sarita, I think you should reach out to Mayank on Koo and ask him questions. I don't think we are built for sharing, but we're going to make this available on YouTube. So, it'll be mailed to all the registrants. So you can always take a look at it. And then
yeah,
I'm assuming if you can type in English, you can also understand what's going on. Right? Yeah. So we have about another 10 more minutes. Keep your Q&A coming. And then meanwhile, I have a few more questions of myself that I want to ask Mayank, and from a positioning and communication perspective, right? So this takes back to my initial question, Mayank, in terms of, this is a very organic evolution from Get Vocal to Koo, right? From what I understand, right? Because you felt there's a clear need and all of that stuff, right? So the value prop itself is great for, to create a clear positioning for Koo itself. Because today, if you tell people about Koo, yeah, they know about it. I don't know if they're talking about it every day or not, or people going there every day or not. That's a different story, right? But as people who are influenced in shaping the conversations, uh, do you have some kind of milestones in terms of saying that in T20 World Cup, I want to achieve this, right? Or in the next month or next 2 months, I want to share this. Next year's elections, I want to do this. Do you have some milestones in mind in terms of what kind of content and conversations you want to happen? Because ultimately, you want new users and existing users both to coexist, right? But in terms of shaping audience and building audience, are there some thoughts that you have or some milestones that you have, either from Koo experience or stuff that you want to share with people, how they should be thinking about it?
Yeah, we look at that from a perspective of what kind of folks we want on the platform in terms of VIPs, what kind of community we want, how deep we want to penetrate in India, and how fast we want to expand internationally. So yes, we do have some broad thoughts on that, with broad milestones around achieving some of those things.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
In terms of growth hacking itself, because every brand wants to, I mean, particularly culture brands, right? Because you want to find a cost-effective way to quickly build your brand, because there are tools available today, right? So from that perspective, I know a lot of our entrepreneurs are on Instagram or on Facebook trying to build a community, right? Are there some takeaway messages that you would like to share in terms of how do you build a community, how do you build content, and how do you build commerce, the entire sort of landscape? There's some thoughts that people should keep in mind.
Very broad question. We're not building commerce through content yet, and hence can't talk about it intelligently. But I can see some questions here. Please tell some growth hacks and something that you're also asking about. Growth hacks are very. This is too generic a question, but understanding what kind of business you're in, things like that might be a little more helpful. So if you guys are asking questions, pointed question could go a longer way.
So, okay, we'll come to growth hacks. There's a question from Vijay Lada, who's one of our mentors. If it is not some confidential information, would you like to share the ratio of men and women, gender basically on your subscribers, and some age bracket? Like, what's the demographic profile, right?
Yeah, so it's more 25 plus, and that be a 70-30 male to female ratio approximately.
20 men and 30% female. Yeah. Yes. All right. Thanks. So coming back to growth hacks, I think one of Bikram also has asked the similar kind of questions. I think from a startup's perspective, right? This is not necessarily Koo per se, but your startup experience, be it Redbus and other stuff. Right? And since we're talking about brand positioning communication, so when you're bootstrapped, you don't have money to go and spend on Facebook and Google and build ads.
Yeah.
So how should I sort of aggregate audience, and how do I build a community, and how do I get my brand known?
Yeah,
that's the question.
Yeah, the simplest framework for that is to figure out for your product or for your brand, not your brand at that stage, but more for your category and product. Where is it that people hang out the most? And let's take an example. If I want to sell bus tickets, I need to understand where is it that someone is looking for bus tickets, right? They're calling Just Dial, or they're searching for something on Google, whether they're searching for Nita Travels, XYZ Travels names, bus tickets online, they're searching for the name of a travel agent, or they're going to a travel desk. You need to be there at that place at that particular time, right? So it is, as far as bus tickets is concerned, you need to crack search engine optimization. You need to crack search engine marketing. If you try to do Facebook ads for a need-based category, I'm not thinking about bus tickets unless I need to travel. If you talk to me at a time when I'm hanging out with friends, it's completely irrelevant. the most relevant place for a brand to talk to is the right media at the right time, right? So, as far as generating real sales is concerned, nothing beats things that you can do on Google, because it's a search engine. People are telling you what their intent is. And hence, search engine optimization as a skill is very important for any startup that you do. Search engine marketing is very important, right? A lot of you that are yet to start startups, one simple tip would be, don't even start without testing some messages. You don't need a prototype to start. You can just create a dummy website. You can say that, please sign up for, put up a broad message of what you want to do, put up a sign up button, say subscribe to us if this makes sense to you. This is how much we'll charge. Start doing some basic marketing to that website, and you'll start getting a sense of, are people going to bite into this? I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs waste a couple of years just trying to launch a product and later realizing that there's no demand for it. It's a very important thing for all folks who are yet to start.
Mm. So that lends a very logical next question, which is, every brand delivers a certain experience, right? That's what makes the brand so special, right? Because it's imagery and experience, right? Particularly one that are moving from this commodity to branded stuff. What would be your thoughts and advice? Like either the millet story, or people building juices and protein supplements and those kind of stuff, right? Because there's so many guys doing it, right? All you have is a different brand name, right? It's just a different brand name. How do you sort of communicate the story? What would be sort of the brand architecture that you would recommend? What will be the key things that one should look for when you want to deliver this experience?
Yeah, I would question why you're doing a business. That's very important. Unless you found a segment that's not being catered to, like you spoke about Twitter being there in the world, it's the largest player out there. But why you guys doing cool? We have a clear reason why we're doing it. If we didn't have that and we said, Twitter is large, it'll be good to see how we can compete with them, is not a good reason to have started. So unless you have a very clear segment that you want to cater to that's not yet catered to, I would rethink why I'm even doing this business.
Right.
And if you are doing it, then you're getting into a very difficult area of trying to differentiate in a very commoditized industry. Unless you have some expertise that you can use to deliver a better experience, it is supply side or something on the distribution side, I would think twice before doing something like this.
All right. There's a question from Muzammil saying, are there any specific customer nudges that Koo does to engage users on the platform? If you could please share.
Yeah, actually, there are quite a few nudges that Koo does on the platform. Like you'll see a few buttons blinking, you'll see a few reaction buttons blinking. That's being done because a lot of vernacular users were coming onto the internet for the first time and not really used to social media platforms. This is the best way to hold hands and take them through a particular journey, and hence nudges like that exist on the platform.
Awesome. Superb. I think there are no more questions, and we've come to the end of another very enriching session. So, I'm really happy to hear from you about the Koo story and the brand piece and the content piece, the audience piece, the experience. I'm sure there are a lot of interesting takeaways for everybody and for me as well that we can apply at Nice.org. Thanks once again, Mayank, for your time and your ideas, and all the very best for your future endeavors.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Bye.